It is customary for Nurse Clark to draw the water from the guard's restroom before she distributes the inmate's medication. Unbeknownst to her, this is where Earl Clanton is now hiding.
Door's
The
locked.
restroom door appears stuck. Nurse Clark notifies the guard. He acknowledges the problem, but does nothing.
All right, get these boys lined up for their medication.
All right, everybody in the room.
Let's go, gentlemen.
Let's go.
Nurse Clark decides to distribute the medication without water, as she has done in the past. As she is making her rounds, one of them complains his toilet is clogged. He creates a diversion, distracting the guards from what is really going on. Officer Hunter joins Nurse Clark as she continues making her medication rounds to the other pods in the building.
The escapees were con artists. They were shrewd in the ways of the street and how they could get around these correctional officers. They had observed from the moment that they entered the institution that certain rules were not being followed, and it played right into their hands.
At Mecklenburg, Building 1 is broken up into 3 pods, A, B, and C. C pod is divided into 2 sections, with a control booth separating the sections.
Certainly. Officer Hughes? Please.
The man who controlled C pod was Rick Hughes. Electrically activated locks give Officer Hughes control over who enters and leaves death row.
Does the control door?
Hughes tells Lettner that one of the inmates got his attention. It was Joe Giarratano, who was housed on the pod's left side. Giarratano asks Hughes to pass a book to inmate James Briley, who was on the pod's right side.
All right, I'll do it this time. Come on, come on.
Linwood Briley and his brother James received death sentences for 7 murders. In one case, they repeatedly raped a woman within earshot of her common-law husband and their 5-year-old son, then killed the 3 of them. Officer Hughes leaves the door to the control booth ajar, as the prisoners had seen him do dozens of times before. He has no idea the inmates are already arming themselves with knives.
There was a fellow by the name of Willie Turner. He was kind of a genius as far as figuring out how to make weapons from the things around him in the prison cell and how to hide them. And he would basically strip metal from around the toilets or the sides of the door or something like that and sharpen it and make a knife out of it.
Convicted of killing a jeweler in 1978 and sentenced to death, Willie Turner never finished 5th grade, but he learned to read and write in prison. He claimed to have made a key for every cell he ever occupied. The guards suspect he is behind the plan to escape. At James Briley's signal, Clanton bursts from the restroom. He hits a button on the control booth, releasing the other inmates. The prisoners take control of C-Pod in barely 3 minutes. Each of the guards relate how he had been taken hostage and stripped of his uniform. The inmates take the only defense the guards have, their nightsticks, along with their watches, rings, and money. The guards are hogtied and shackled with their own handcuffs. Blindfolded, they overhear the inmates discuss how they need to capture someone in authority.
He's one at a time. Everyone else just relax.
The senior officer is Watch Commander Lieutenant Mark Johnson.
Reconstruct the events from the very first time you were involved.
Lettner's report indicates he was in Building 3 when he responded to a page. Building 3, located on the opposite side of Mecklenburg, houses the shipping department.
Lieutenant Johnson, please call 161. Lieutenant Johnson, 161.
Lieutenant Johnson is asked to call the extension of the CPOD day room. The phone is answered by one of the guards held hostage. Lieutenant Johnson has no idea the guard is being held at knife point.
CPOD left, need you right away.
The guard tells Johnson he needs help with inmate Giarratano, who he says has been wounded in an altercation.
Lieutenant Fisher, Lieutenant Johnson, come in, please.
Johnson calls the shift commander and orders him to report to CPOD.
So the key is just to ignore them, you know? Don't pay any attention to them.
Nurse Clark finishes passing out her medication to the rest of the inmates in Building 1. The exit is through this locked door. Unfortunately, Officer Hunter has misplaced his key. He decides to return to CPOD, unaware it is now in control of the inmates. Hunter walks right into their arms. Hunter is taken down to the pod's lower tier, where he joins the other hostages. The conspirators need his uniform. They force Hunter to strip to his underwear, then blindfold and hogtie him. The inmates know the security procedures, and they make the system work against itself.
They got the other guards to come to Pod C simply by faking emergencies, that they needed assistance with inmate so-and-so who was not taking his medication or resisting one thing or another.
By creating the illusion of a fellow correctional officer in trouble, the inmates lure other guards into CPOD one by one. They then capture them and take their uniforms. Nurse Clark is beginning to wonder what is keeping Officer Hunter. When a guard finally arrives, she is relieved.
Hey, turn around.
She has no idea her terrifying ordeal is just beginning. In Western Virginia, 6 convicted killers have escaped from death row and have been on the loose for over 2 hours. Investigators have no leads to their whereabouts. Police are frantically searching a wide perimeter. Using every resource available, they struggle to maintain it, desperate to contain the inmates. Virginia State Police investigator Jim Lettner continues gathering information for his report by interrogating the prison security staff, hoping they will provide some leads to where the escaped inmates are headed. Each officer recounts his terrifying ordeal. One by one, they are taken hostage. The inmates use their uniforms as a disguise to lure more officers into the trap. The guards tell Lettner James Briley wanted to kill some hostages.
Guards in here. I think we wanted to kill a few of them.
There were too many, Briley said. He was afraid they would become unmanageable. Willie Turner, one of the inmates, talks Briley out of it. They had agreed there would be no murders. Derek Peterson returns with Nurse Clark. They take her to a cell. Nurse Clark is alone when Earl Clanton appears. Clanton had been convicted of killing 2 women, and now he has his eyes on Nurse Clark. Surrounded by convicted killers bent on freedom or revenge, the security staff doubts they will live to see morning. The screams of Nurse Clark stir them to anger, but they can do nothing. Linwood Briley joins Earl Clanton. As they begin to molest the nurse, Wilbert Lee Evans stops the men. Willie Turner reminds Linwood to remember the plan. It has been 20 minutes since Lieutenant Johnson received a report about an emergency on death row. He begins to wonder what is happening in C-Pod. He sent the shift commander to help out, but he never reported back. Johnson investigates the situation himself. The stairwell doors lock automatically behind him.
Give me the jacket. Come here. It's time for you to shake him.
The inmates threaten to kill Johnson if he does not do as they order. Once the inmates no longer have any use for them, the hostages fear they will all be killed. It has been 3 hours since the escape, and still there have been no sightings of the fugitives. Authorities begin to fear they've slipped the search perimeter. If that is true, a lot of innocent people are in danger. As the prison guards continue their account, Jim Lettner still hopes to find one detail that will lead him to the killers.
And got a radio.
In the main control room, Officer Cindy Smith had word that an inmate was injured, but no one had called the paramedics. During the past hour, several officers and supervisors had gone up to death row. None had reported back. Officer Smith begins to worry.
Main control room, Officer Smith.
The inmates on death row have taken all the guards in C-Pod hostage. Having all the uniforms and money they need, it is time to make good their escape and get out of Building 1. They move the hostages to a janitor's closet at the end of C-Pod. James Briley grabs a television set. Somehow he would have to pass it off as a bomb. Now that the inmates have control of C-Pod, they have to get